want to fill you in on a brand new trial that we're going to be covering all of next week out of Irwin County, Georgia. 36-year-old defendant Ryan Duke previously confessed to killing Georgia beauty queen Tara Grinstead, who's been missing since 2005. But Duke is pleading not guilty, arguing this was a false confession and even claiming his co-defendant is the real killer. Now, burned human bones were discovered near co-defendant Bo Duke's pecan orchard farm back in 2017 when he led investigators to these remains. However, there's no DNA to prove that they're Grinstead's remains. Both defendants have previously confessed to their role in the murder, and Bo Dukes is already serving 25 years in prison on concealment charges in this case. Only time will tell what was going to happen to Ryan Duke, but to give you kind of a better sense and a better idea of what we can expect in this case, I want to actually listen into a pretrial hearing that took place back in March. And during this hearing, defense attorney Ashley Merchant requested to have a false confession expert to testify on behalf of her client. And Merchant and her husband are representing Ryan Duke pro bono. They believe that he is innocent. Let's listen into some of the arguments and we'll break it down on the other side.
And I'm not really sure who the expert is. We've not been served with any witness list with this particular expert. It was through the ex parte motions that we discovered that they intended to call a witness on false confessions. And of course, in this case, Ryan Dukes, as we just talked about in the Jackson Ditto hearing issue, on February 22nd, after being Mirandized, confessed to murdering Tara Grinstead here at her home in Irwin County. And through that confession, of course, they have, through these ex parte motions that have been heard before this court, they talked about calling a false confession expert, that his confession was gained falsely. And our first contention is that's inadmissible. We would have to have a Parker hearing. We've not been served with the name of this expert, a curriculum vitae of this expert, to know who he is, to be able to cross-examine him. It would require a Harper hearing, just as we would have to have in the True Allel. And we've not been provided with any of that information, number one. Secondly, to that, false confessions have been ruled inadmissible. I have 3 Georgia Supreme Court cases which cite other cases.
You mean expert testimony?
Expert testimony about false confessions has been ruled inadmissible. All of them Supreme Court cases. The first one was a death penalty case.
But I can tell you at this stage, it is my anticipation that the state is going to put in people, whether they qualify them as experts or not. They have experts on their witness list. They have false confession experts. I have interviewed their purported confession experts. So they've got currently on their witness list experts in confessions. So we then need to be able to put up an expert to counter their expert in confessions. That's only fair. And so I don't know what all they're going to be putting in. I assume they're going to be putting in this statement that they claim is this truthful confession. I assume that. And I assume they're going to be arguing to the jury all of the points that make this, in their mind, a truthful confession. We then, in turn, should be able to put in all of the reasons through an expert who can explain this, why we disagree with their expert and disagree with their theory that this is a truthful statement.
The Lyons case, the one that the state cited.
In the brief, yeah.
Yeah, they in that case, the defense expert was going to testify about police interrogation techniques, and that the issue of whether certain interview techniques could result in a greater likelihood of false confessions, and then asked to impart specifically about the defendant's case, and then how interrogations work. It's different, and it's hard without having the testimony before the court to explain, but there are certain things that were present in this case. The voluntary consumption of drugs, for example, psychological factors, things like that were present in this case that the normal juror doesn't understand unless they get expert testimony on it. And so we believe that Agent Sheldell is going to say, I don't think he was under the influence of drugs. So then we are entitled to bring an expert to say he could have been under the influence of drugs, and this is what that looks like. Because otherwise, all the jury's left with is Agent Sheldell saying, I don't think he was under drugs. No, I asked him that, and he said no. And that's all they're left with. How do they determine if he was under drugs or not when all they're left with is Agent Sheldell's testimony that says he believed they were? I mean, maybe the state's not going to put forward all that, but we're anticipating that they are, and so we're going to have an expert lined up in case they do.
Rich, do you think that this false confession expert should be allowed to testify? Because a big part of their case and their theory is that Ryan Duke believed that there was a possible plea deal on the table when he confessed, and Bo Dukes confessed with no plea deal on the table. So it makes it seem like, something's up here.
Well, in the abstract, I definitely think the false confession expert should be allowed to testify. We know now that many confessions turn out to be false or not corroborated. I mean, that John Oliver did a piece on this a month or two ago on his show that was very compelling about false confessions. So in the abstract, I think both sides should be able to present their evidence. What I don't know, there are some procedural issues here about when disclosure was given and that kind of thing. And there are very specific rules in the courts for getting this kind of testimony in. And I don't know if they blew it on those rules, which might keep it out, even though, again, I think in theory it should be allowed in.
But focusing a little bit more on the false confession aspect, Dr. Delatorre, is it the idea that someone confesses thinking they did it, like legitimately thinking it, but they were mistaken, that they have this false perception of what happened, that maybe they're under the influence of a substance that changes it? What's your take on false confessions?
Yeah, having done false confession evaluations, throughout my career, absolutely, it's all of those things, and it's more. It's also looking at the coercive and undue influence of how the interview is being conducted. It's looking at the body language and everything that's going on when it comes to how that individual is answering questions. What kinds of influences might they be under, right? You're looking at a wide variety of things, including the length of time that the interview is going on, and how many different places is it? You're looking at so many different things that absolutely it could, at some instance, become coercive. There could be some undue influence, and you got to be able to extract out when exactly were they voluntarily now giving their statement and not under coercion.
It's such a fascinating case. We actually did a prime crime on this as well. And, Bo Duke said that he wasn't involved in the killing, just the cover up because the body was on his family's property. I guess he felt, I'm just going to help him out. He needed my help, which, again, I think rings to a lot of people as so weird. And that is why there's a contingency out there who believe that Bo Dukes is the real killer and Ryan Duke is not. And maybe during the course of this trial, which has been, we're talking since 2005, we've been wanting answers. Maybe we will get more answers during this trial than we've ever had before.